Here is Zirconia, and Zirconia is a 16-hand 3-year-old thoroughbred mare by Silver State, which is a hard spun line. She had 6 career starts, which is sort of on par with, a 3-year-old towards the end of summer. She never hit the board, so 6 very non-competitive starts, so it makes perfect sense that she's no longer a racehorse. Her last start was on 722, and she could have, her connections wanted to send her to me right after that last start. I just didn't have space yet. So she got to get chucked out. I get a couple of weeks of just full time 24/7 big group turnout at my friend's place while she waited for a spot to open up here. So that's nice. So Zirconia, she has the big thing about her, besides the fact that she is just super duper adorable, is that she has a right front oscillate, and her racing connections were kind enough to take fresh radiographs and share them with me. So I have them, and they are publicly available in her Flickr album, and that Flickr album is linked to my website. So you just go to houndrunfarm.com, horses for sale, and it is underneath her description. So you can see them, you can share them with your vet or whoever else needs to see them. And so, it's an oscillate. It's just the radiographs show just your sort of average Joe oscillate. And the vets that have looked at it have said, it's your basic oscillate. It doesn't necessarily limit her in any way. However, I'm not going to say that this should go be some upper level horse. She should not be. She should be more of like a mid level horse, lower to mid level horse, just because you want to protect her and why take unnecessary risks. She's absolutely adorable. She's 3. She only had 6 career starts. She's green as grass, so she needs a complete education. But she has a really cute way of going, and she's really gorgeous. I mean, she has this big, beautiful white face and the socks and all the things. So she's very attractive to look at, both standing still and in motion. This is her very first post-track ride, for which she was excellent. She doesn't. The steering is actually pretty good. You'll see a couple of times where it's obvious that I'm riding a 3-year-old who's having her first post-track ride. Like you can't just assume she's going to go, straight down the long side and make every turn. You gotta, ride and educate her. But she's actually being really good and really honest and willing to try. She simply doesn't know. She's very green to the contact. To me, it just kind of feels like nobody's ever touched her mouth. So we didn't get into that a lot in this first post-track ride. I'm just sort of assessing her in this ride and getting a feel for her. The way that she was in the contact, I actually think that some work on the lunge line and Vienna reins or side reins would really help her. I'm just gonna throw this out there. I hate lunging. I hate lunging in equipment. I find it annoying and time consuming, and I don't like creating horses dependent on lunging, so I try to never use lunging as like a energy release type thing. However, in her case, actually, equipment like side reins or Vienna reins could do a much better job than I can of just staying super steady. So I actually think a couple sessions and something like that will really help her to sort of understand the contact a bit better. She's not doing anything wrong. She simply has no idea. And you can see she's trying all sorts of things to sort of figure it out. She goes up, she goes down. Sometimes she meets me in the middle. And she was excellent because she showed that she has a great brain and she's totally willing to try. Just super green. She needs all the training and all the buttons installed. But there's absolutely nothing about her that is worrisome. And just circling back to the oscillate for a second here, obviously she is super sound. So the oscillate, but of course her price is going to be much lower because of the oscillate. So I've got her price in the very low 4 figures at $2,000. Hound Run Farm, it's a for-profit LLC. No part of it is a not-for-profit legally. However, I feel very strongly that, I've made my career and really my whole life from the backs of thoroughbreds. And so I really think it's important to give back. And so, obviously this is not a horse that I'm putting on the market as a profitable venture. It's completely not. But I know her connections well. I've gotten nice horses from them in the past, and it's just the right thing to do. To help out a horse who's perfectly sound and serviceable for a lot of people in a lot of different careers. And so this is just kind of like the other side of it. It makes absolutely no, financial accounting sense to do these sorts of things, but it's kind of just the right thing to do, for the breed, and just to give back to these horses a little bit. I do toss around sometimes the idea of creating a section of Hound Run Farm that is a nonprofit, because I certainly do actually a lot of these horses that have some little things that make them really not profitable at all, but just are such great horses, and they're going to go on to have such long careers for people. The problem that I keep coming back to with the nonprofit stuff is just, well, a couple of things. There's so much paperwork. I don't know if I can handle it. Just one more huge thing to add to the to-do list. I already have a hard enough time keeping up with my books as it is. And I guess what I like about just sort of doing it on my own, not in any sort of legal way, is just that I can make all my own quick decisions without any sort of double checking or anything like that. But I do my fair share of these, and she is certainly one who, is just here for me to try and help to get a great home. Somebody's going to get a really, really pretty, lovely, sound young horse that's going to go on to do a whole bunch of stuff. But, you're going to have to be okay with a less than perfect radiograph. She really sort of settled into the canter work. By the time we went to the left, she'd really sort of taken a breath here. She has such a cute face. Those ears are up and pricked. I always think it's important to remember when it's their first post track ride. Of course I say it, but just to really, especially with the 3-year-olds, it's one thing when they're 6 or 7. Like when Icing had his first post track ride the other day and he just kind of went around like a lesson horse. Like, yeah, because he's 7 years old, he had 40 something career starts. Like for him, this is just another day at the office. It's no big deal. But, for these 3-year-olds who just have a handful of starts, it is a big deal and it's eye opening. And I always think it's so impressive when they can handle these rides so nicely. And of course, they're green and there's so much to learn, but they really sort of show like what their brain's going to be like when they're under a little bit of stress and they're not sure about things, because I'm sure that they are experiencing that sort of pressure when they're having their first post track ride here.